Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Tuesday, February 18th. We're going to be talking Notre Dame's championship foundation that they have built. I'm going off. I saw a post about this on Twitter. Daniel Jeremiah, longtime scout with the Baltimore Ravens and in the NFL, and now he's an analyst for the NFL Network. He has basically a formula, 12 key positions that teams need to be a championship contender. And so we're going to go over Notre Dame's 12 positions and how good those positions are and how positioned they are to be a national title contender again in 2025. Obviously played for the national title in 2024. Talk about that. There's some news and notes around Notre Dame's personnel. Mike Mickens has an Instagram post. We'll talk about that. Mike Martin is their new GM, and some other staff moves as well. And then we'll get some listener comments and questions. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. If you like what you hear, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so whenever it is we are going live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. And as always, the show is brought to you by ESQ Clothing, founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best custom clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best in 2025. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or the perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com. Book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. And there is also a new ESQ location opening up in Illinois in Winnetka. Jamie, do you have the address? I didn't write it down. That's my
I'll look it up again.
And by the way, I'm full of mea culpas today. I have to say I apologize. You know, I knew I was going to do it eventually, and today is the day I did it. I put a typo in the graphic. I spelled championship wrong. I knew it was going to happen. and I eventually did it, so I'm gonna have to change that when we get off the show. But I apologize.
It is 1085 Gage Street.
1085 Gage Street in Winnetka, Illinois. So go check out Ge at his new shop. Expanding. We love to see that. We love to see the expansion from Ge Wang. Notre Dame is expanding their personnel department with Mike Martin. We talked about it yesterday with Mike Frank on the Power Hour. Check that out on YouTube as well. It's a good show. People enjoyed it. About an hour and 20 minutes of Notre Dame football talk. You guys went heavily into Mike Martin and why this is a big coup for Notre Dame to pick him up from the Detroit Lions from a scheme standpoint, from what they're looking for and the types of players, what they're trying to build. The championship foundation, I think Detroit themselves has a very good championship foundation. They need to not get hurt, I think, is their biggest problem. There were some injuries there that they had to incur, or that they did incur, and that hurt their chances. But they've got a good thing that Mike Martin helped build over there, and it's the same style of player that Notre Dame's looking for. Nasty, build on the lines, things of that nature. Mike Mickens put out a tweet or an Instagram post. We'll be back. People are fired up about this, Jamie. It's a pretty big deal for Notre Dame's secondary. Big. Yeah. Talk about this. And just I think there was some concern. He might go to Texas. He might have been up for some DC jobs. He's going to be back in Notre Dame. His exact role, we're not sure yet, but this is huge for the Notre Dame secondary.
Yeah, I think it is huge. I think it's massive. And I think for what it means for this year, obviously, I mean, he did such an outstanding job with the guys that are, coming back already. We know that he's such a tremendous, evaluator of talent. But when you're trying to sell, obviously part of the selling of bringing corners to Notre Dame is Mike Mickens. Yeah. And trying to get guys in the secondary is Mike Mickens. And you're going to get developed by this guy, and that's who you're going to work with. Well, it's a lot easier to sell hey, these are the guys he's developed, that Notre Dame's developed, when that guy is still there. So I think that's huge for recruiting. From that sense, And just in general, like, I mean, the guy's an awesome coach. He's a phenomenal coach. So great news for Notre Dame that they went through the carousel, coaching carousel, and he's sticking around. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. And I'm really happy for guys like Dallas Golden and Mark Zachary, Cree Thomas, the guys that are coming into the class who obviously, they want to work with Mike Mickens, right? And I think it's important for their development that they at least get 1 year under him. That's a big deal. And obviously, look, anytime you have him on the staff another year, right? Like you think with Chris Ash being around, Mike Mickens is probably going to look to be, a DC somewhere in the near future, but he always have a chance. You never know what can happen, right? Chris Ash could do really well this year and then leave somewhere else. And Mike Mickens then would be ready to step into the DC role. You never know. And as long as you have him on your staff, that gives you the chance to have that. So that's very good for Notre Dame. And then speaking of the secondary, Matt put on the board today on some reporting from the John Bryce over at the Scoop, the Football Scoop. Notre Dame will add Dom Spalding as an offensive analyst. I thought that the defensive backs was yesterday. They added someone from West Virginia as a defensive analyst. Today, Dom Spalding as an offensive analyst is going to work with wide receivers. He was at Youngstown State. He spent time with the Penguins before his stop at Northwestern. So he was at Northwestern and Youngstown State before that. So he's going to work with wide receivers, going to help out Mike Brown. So again, it's topical because there was a question on Power Hour yesterday about Notre Dame being aggressive in hiring these analysts. I believe these are on-field roles now. They didn't used to be, and now there's kind of no limit there. So they can be analysts. They can work on the field with the players. So it adds value, and Notre Dame's taking advantage of that. How big of a deal do you think it is? Maybe not necessarily Dom Spalding, but for Notre Dame to take advantage of the fact that they can have more on-field coaches supporting the position guys like Mike Brown and Mike Mickens and Chris Ash, people.
I mean, I think it's a big deal, but I mean, let's be honest. These analysts were all
they were already doing it. I
mean, they were. I maybe they weren't as involved when the media was there. But, I'm not talking about Notre Dame. I'm talking about
everybody. Everyone.
It's everybody. That's why it was like the biggest, it wasn't a secret. This is what was going on. Like, these guys they're heavily involved. And the thing is too, it was just stupid for them not to, especially when part of it is, guys like Spalding, guys like Javon Codlin, like, you're supposed to be developing them as coaches.
Yeah.
So how are they going to develop as coaches if they're just like observing from the outside? Like, they got to be involved and actually coach these guys. Right. And if it wasn't like that, then a guy like Chris O'Leary wouldn't have been able to rise up and look at what he's.
Trevor Mendelson is a good example. He's very quickly rising as a O-line guy.
Yeah. Perfect example. Trevor Mendelson, obviously, there's been guys like Nick Lazinski, who's obviously, coaching linebackers for Clark Lee at Vanderbilt right now. So it's another one of those things. And I think too, like, it's always like a interesting thing to kind of like see how some people approach it, where they're getting like, bringing veteran guys to come in and being like more of that veteran voice, or if they're getting like young guys who are like kind of like rising up. But I'm always of the opinion that you should get, unless there's someone that you have like a really good relationship with, that is you're bringing in as like a a bigger voice to kind of like come in and help. I think it's good to get young guys and get these young guys and develop them. One, because those guys might be candidates to coach at Notre Dame again one day. So I think always that's a good thing. And the other thing is you don't know if like one of those guys is going to be like an O'Leary that sticks around. And then, when there's an opportunity there, who ends up being a great coach and a great recruiter. But like also too, it's just like one of these things where these guys, they say it's like it's a young man's game, and it is in a lot of ways in terms of like how many hours and like the grunt work that these guys are putting in, like off the field, that they're putting into the extra stuff in terms of preparation and all that. And it's very helpful. to have these guys. And there's been so many guys like specifically like, from like the, Brian Kelly era, like through Marcus Freeman, where you've just seen like young guys go and you're like, well, this guy was at Notre Dame for like a brief time. And then all of a sudden he's that. And there, if you go back to like days of like Holtz and Davey and stuff, there's so many guys that you just didn't even think of that were like, man, this guy was a grad assistant at Notre Dame that just like really rose up. And that's kind of how it works, right? That's how it works. And it's always a cool thing to get these guys in there. And I think one of the things that they've done a really good job of like identifying these guys and bringing them in, and these guys have been good coaches.
Yeah, they've always had like really good support staff. It's kind of like a, talk about culture and things like that. It's kind of been a secret sauce for Notre Dame, and I'm sure this happens at other programs too. I mean, they are not well known even to Notre Dame fans. So there's people at other programs that fit the same bill, but Notre Dame's done a really good job with their support staff, and they've got a lot of people kind of helping out in that area. I want to give some time to Jay Grizz this question. I was going to bring it up anyway, so this is very topical from Jay Grizz. Is Notre Dame still in a good spot as an independent with the playoffs looking to expand to 14 or 16 teams? And how would it benefit Notre Dame or hinder Notre Dame as an independent? Is Notre Dame better off just joining a conference? There's been a lot of reporting on this on Yahoo and on ESPN as well about conference commissioners meeting over the last couple weeks. There's going to be some more meetings as well. I think they're very definitely going to go to 14 or 16 teams. I guess it would be 2026, I think they're saying, Jamie, after this year.
Yeah.
I think for this year's playoffs, they'll probably do away with the automatic bids, automatic buys for the conference champions. They did not like Boise State and Arizona State getting those automatic top 4 seeds, and
I think everyone has to agree to it though, so it might not.
They have to agree, but the big
because it's like one of the things of like when it's the 2026 that thing is like that is when the Big Ten and SEC have more power, and that's why they're trying to do like they're basically strong arming everyone. Which they should get rid of those automatic bids. It's stupid, but I agree with that. But I don't know if it's like a slam dunk that it's going to happen. But either way, like kind of Jay Grizz's question, like I think they are in a fine spot. They're probably in a better spot.
I was actually I think it's okay. What's basically going to happen is as it relates to Notre Dame, it sounds like there's going to be a carve out for Notre Dame as far as if they are ranked in the top, let's say 14 of the final playoff, then they get the final playoff ranking. They're going to get an automatic bid, basically. So just be ranked in the top 14. They won't be left out in that way. It's kind of an automatic bid for them. So that's the deal. And that kind of opens the door in some years. You can lose 2 games, right? You can go 10-2 and be ranked in the top 14. Notre Dame's done that many times before. Not necessarily with the committee and not necessarily this last year. But like you can lose twice and be ranked in the top 14 and be a playoff team. It's like, 4 automatic bids for SEC, 4 automatic bids for the Big Ten. So there's going to be 8 of the 14 or 16 teams from those 2 conferences. They're good. The chances are good that they will have that many teams deserving on a year-to-year basis. It's a little bit like, you're going to have some 3-loss teams in there as well, right? And some 3-loss teams that like this last year with Alabama losing to a bad team at the end of the year, right? Just like for their 3rd loss. But that's the way it is going to be. But I think it seems like Notre Dame's going to be in a good spot. That's just kind of how I see it. This doesn't show any sort of impetus for Notre Dame needing to join a conference to me.
No, I don't think so. It could get to that way just in terms of like, I don't think it's going to, how like the money, depending on what they do, if they change stuff with like the money and how that's going to be there. But, Matthew Patterson asked, do they have a representative? Yes, they do.
Yes.
Yeah.
They absolutely have a city.
Yeah. Pete Bavak was there. Like he's the only like individual like representative from a university there. So like, compared to it's conference commissioners and Pete Bavacqua. So it's like, Notre Dame is represented. They're not like, oh, the ACC's like, oh, the ACC's also fight. No, that's not what it is. Like Notre Dame is there. They're still very well represented. Like, they're in no danger of getting left out of any of that stuff, especially too because I think it's just the bargaining chip of them being like, well, we went and beat these teams and we made the final. Like,
and not just that, but they did it beating the SEC in the Big Ten.
Yes. So that was, it's significant, right? So
they beat the SEC champion.
Yeah, it might get to a point where, like I think I've kind of said, like it is them breaking off, and making those, like, having all those automatic bids is basically like asking is leaning towards the Super League, right? Like that's kind of what it is, but it's just the truth is just they hold all the power because they are, if they say they don't agree, if they don't agree to something like that, it's not gonna happen, right? Like they get the most eyeballs on them, comparatively, like to the other conferences. When you look at like television ratings, there's just very few, like no one cares about any of the Big 12 teams in terms of television ratings. Like none of those teams rate. Colorado's like just with Dion because of like that kind of factor, but also too, like now that like Travis Hunter and all that, like what is that going to happen what if they stink again this year, which they could, right? So there's all of these kind of things there. Like there might be a situation where Notre Dame is forced into the Big Ten, and that could happen at some point, but right now, no. And I think also too, the thing with them making that agreement with the ACC to like get those bigger games against, that's important. Like people don't think it's like, well, they'd rather not have it. They want an easier path. The Big Ten and SEC are making it a harder path for them to do it in terms of the schedule because they want more money for their television contracts to go to renegotiate it. So they're going to add an extra, they're going to go 9 conference games and then have like one big team's going to play one SEC team and they're going to do that. So it's like, if they're doing that, that means that some of these big teams are going to not want to play, Notre Dame or SEC teams are not going to want to play Notre Dame. So it's like Notre Dame has to have those games because it's then it's just will make it so much harder to even just be in the top 14 if you're not, playing enough of those games. Right. So, and ultimately, I think even though them having the power isn't good for college football, having more games that matter in those conferences, that's good for college football. Like I want to see those games.
Yeah. Everyone does, and like, Nick Dean is asking like, what if the conference just start to say, don't schedule Notre Dame and Notre Dame can't get 12 games? I think they always they want to play like Arkansas wants to play Notre Dame. Like that's a big deal for them, right? Like I think teams like, I don't think the conferences and how they view it, and especially like the ADs, like Notre Dame is a game that you kind of want to get, right? Like it's good for their universities, like I don't think that like it would be purely out of spite, right? I just don't think they need to do that. Like it just, they want to put a good product out there. That's
why the Jen Cohen stuff with USC and her being like, well, we got to see what's best. Like, get out of here. That's no one shows up to your games. So you're gonna make sure that just because you play Rutgers, you don't want that extra game, whatever, like to travel every 2 years. You got to travel out to South Bend. You get that home game with Notre Dame every 2 years. Like it's one of the only games that your fans actually show up for, because believe me, when they're like, 8-4 or whatever, like if they have 4 losses or more, no one goes to the games. Greg, like no one cares about USC when they're not at the highest level. Even when they're like kind of just close to there, people don't care as much, right? So, and I guess if they're thinking, well, we need like the easier games to do it, no, just get better. Just get better.
There's a lot of loser behavior coming out of
extreme
USC right
loser
now.
behavior.
It's like unbecoming. It's unbecoming. Even saying, like, even her quote saying, like, "Oh, Chad did less with more."
Get out of here.
Or he did more with less. Like, what an awful, just an awful comment. Like, even if you think it's true or whatever, you just don't say it, especially when you've lost by 2 touchdowns at home and then you lost by 28 the year before.
Yeah.
And then you say this is like Chad Bowden is the reason that this happened. Like, look, Chad Bowden had a big role in that. Okay, he did. Like, he was the guy in charge of the. He
had a role.
He had a
role.
You just cannot.
It's also just telling you. It's just saying, Lincoln Riley, why are we paying you this money?
Exactly. Like, it is so.
It's just shots fired at Lincoln Riley.
It is like, so just an unintentional, and maybe it was intentional. I have no idea. Just an unintentional shot at your head coach. It's unbelievable.
Like, it's so stupid. Like, and whatever. I mean, we don't need to get into the whole deal, but just the idea of Chad Bowden having like, he makes $1 million a year, and then he's going to have more say than the guy who makes $11 million a year. Like, what? What is this? Like,
there's about to be some smoke in the city. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah.
We're monitoring the USC situation. All right, let's talk about Notre Dame situation here. All right, so Daniel Jeremiah, his championship foundation keys. You got to have a good quarterback, right? Your quarterback's got to be set. 3 offensive playmakers, 3 defensive playmakers, 3 quality O-line, 2 quality pass rushers, right? Now, the big question mark for Notre Dame this year is the quarterback position. Do you want to get into that now, or do you want to just jump in on the quarterbacks? Because it's a big question. So look, if the quarterback is, well, I guess whoever it is, right? Like Steve Angeli, I think he's the high floor guy. He's the high floor, lower ceiling player, where it's like, he's started games, not started games. He's played in games for Notre Dame. He's played in high leverage games for Notre Dame, right? So it's just, that he can play, what he can do. Or I'm sorry, he did start. He started the bowl game, right? So you have Kenny Minchey, who is kind of the wild card. You guys were talking about Kenny Minchey as if, yesterday he might have the highest ceiling of all these guys in terms of his arm and what he can do with his arm and the type of arm that he has and the type of player that he is, the mobility that he has, right? And then you have CJ Carr, who just, like, we forget how good he looked in the spring game and how it was just like, this guy's he's going to be special, right? And this is the big key for Notre Dame, where they go here. How do you kind of assess the situation at quarterback? Obviously, we're going to talk a ton about this over the next few months, but just kind of an overview of kind of where things stand with Notre Dame and their quarterback position and what it means for their, hopeful success in 2025.
Well, I mean, obviously, everybody knows the importance of the quarterback position and, like, what it is. Like, I think one of the reasons that people were so upset early in the year of where kind of Notre Dame, stood was because people didn't believe in Riley Leonard. And there were people who didn't believe in him before. So it was like the people that he came in and then it was
confirmation bias.
Yeah. Right. So there was just a lot of that. And then I think over the course of the year, I mean, it just became obvious that he, or if he didn't earn your trust by the end, like, then yeah, you are just one of these people that just only use confirmation bias because it wasn't anything that the product that he was putting on the field. Like, he just was a winning quarterback. He was a winning quarterback just all the way. Like, just in everything he did, was avoiding sacks, obviously making plays with his legs and all that. So Leonard finished as a top, he's 14th in QBR. So here's the list of QB. I'm just going to run it down. So just to kind of like give the importance of it. Cade Klubnik was 15th. Playoff. They won the ACC.
Yeah.
So Leonard, Garrett Nussmeier, LSU, Carson Beck, Georgia. Obviously, they won the SEC. Sam Leavitt, ASU, won the Big 12. Drew Aller, went to the CFP semifinals. Haynes King had a great year. Had 500 yards of total offense against Georgia. Jalen Milroe, obviously they missed the playoff, but he was pretty darn good. Will Howard was 7th. Unbelievable in the playoff. Obviously unbelievable versus Blake Horvath, Navy, probably the most dangerous explosive runner out there. Sawyer Robertson, Baylor, maybe unexpected to see him on there. But Jackson Dart, Ole Miss, Curtis Work, Indiana. We had a monster year for Indiana. Dylan Gabriel, Cam Ward. It's like winning and getting to that kind of area. Like you just don't see teams that had, maybe if you surround yourself like a Texas. So Quinn Ewers was down below and he was like, in top 30. You can have that if you have all that other Texas talent around you. But if you don't have that, then it's tough to have. I think you need like a top 15 quarterback, to kind of like be like a real contender. So that's kind of what you're looking at, where I think when you look at like big picture, and we don't know what's going to happen, we have to see, obviously these guys are going to battle it out, but everything should kind of be viewed as the thing of like, not just who can win in Miami to start the season. That's obviously a big one. And I think right now you would say that was the biggest reason why you would say that Angeli has more of an edge, because he just stepped into a college football playoff game and drove it down, and they got 3 points when they need them in like a big spot. So there's that. And Minchie and Carr haven't played. So it's like they don't have that. So from that perspective, you say, well, he would have an edge. From the perspective of like, well, which of these guys is going to be a top 15 quarterback? I think that's how you got to kind of play it out. And let's see where it goes with Carr and Minchie. And, because all these things like avoiding sacks, protecting the football, but also having the dynamic ability to manage a game, but then also have that extra dynamic ability too, I think is, important. And I think the other thing is that you want to see Notre Dame should want to be a more explosive offense, especially throwing the football, and be a better, passing offense than they were. And obviously Leonard did a good job, and there was other pieces of it that, weren't there for him. And he obviously he came through if you look at like his last 2 games, it was like 2 of his best games throwing the ball. Right. Yeah. So, but you want to have that kind of like throughout the year. And that's kind of like, what you're looking at. So I think ultimately it'll be about like consistency with all these pieces together that are going to bring it. But I think the good thing, even though Angeli, there's the questions about whether or not he will, how good he's at like his feel in the pocket, his escaping the rush, all that kind of stuff. He can run. He can do some of that. He can be used as a runner, not the same way that Leonard can. And the other 2 guys, I would say, are like pretty dynamic. Like they're not, maybe not Leonard, but like that's maybe just a tier below.
Yeah. I think like a huge question for Marcus Freeman going into the spring is, how do you assess these guys from an ability to like avoid sacks? Because we talked about it. I've talked about it before. And to me, this is kind of like my biggest thing, like even more than the turnovers and all that other stuff. Like how do you avoid those negative plays where it's just like the drive ends? I mean, I can't, like, so many times we saw Angeli when he got in the game this year, even like they would have a good drive. The Penn State game, it's a good drive. He got sacked a couple of times where it's like the drive ends. Like you can't go score a touchdown because the drive's over, right? And look, there were reasons for that. There was a bad snap, and I don't want to get too much into it, but like that is that there's the difference between sometimes like scoring a touchdown on a drive and settling for a field goal on a drive is like the one sack that you avoid that keeps you from, second and 18 and you're in second and 10, you're able to convert, right? Like how do they simulate that? How do they see who's the best at that? Like, to me, that's like a huge thing. And it's very hard to do in the spring because like guys aren't really getting hit, and you're not doing live stuff with your quarterbacks. You don't want to get them hurt, right? You understand why, but you also need to know what you have. And the good part about Riley Leonard and a good part about grabbing a portal guy is they've played lots of games usually. So exactly how they have handled it in a live situation. Notre Dame doesn't have that this year. They've got a little bit of it with Angeli. They have more of that on his end. They don't really have any in CJ Carr on a college level, and they have a little bit maybe in Kenny Minchie as well, right? So to me, that's the big question. It'll be interesting to see how they decide to adjudicate that and they decide to figure that out. It's a good question for about how they're going to figure that out. You mentioned explosiveness. Let's talk about that, because this is where like I think Notre Dame can really be like a serious team in 2025, even more so, right? So you have your offensive playmakers. Jeremiah Love is obviously one of the most explosive players in college football, right? Nice to have him. I didn't put Jadarian Price in here. You thought that he might fit into this kind of three criteria, and I think the explosiveness piece is a huge part of that. To me, I didn't, because I didn't know how much of a mainstay he would be on a game-to-game basis, right? So I went, like, I know Jaden Greathouse is going to be a big factor, and I know Malachi Fields is like, he's such a natural fit for that boundary. And like, if he gets the amount of snaps that Bill Collins did, like, these are the three guys where it's like game to game, week to week, they are going to be our guys. And look, Jaden Greathouse is just like, you don't think of him as an explosive player. Lots of explosive plays in 2024, right? You get the slot fades, you get the deep ball against Louisville, you get the deep ball against Penn State. Now the player fell, but that's still a deep route that they're trying to hit him on. He's able to catch and run against Ohio State. I just think for me, the explosiveness piece here makes it a lot easier for the quarterbacks, to where I think Notre Dame counted on Riley Leonard to be an explosive player. I don't think they need that from the quarterback as much this year, because you have these guys as your main playmakers.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too, is that you have those guys, and you want, like, Fields has done that, and he has been a deep threat, and he's obviously a big body and a guy who can really run. So there's that. But I think one of these things, and I know we're gonna kind of go through all of these categories, but one of the things why Notre Dame is set up well is because they have like a lot of options there. So, you can say Greathouse and feel, Love is going to be there no matter what. And obviously I would say Greathouse deserves to be there no matter what, just based off of, what we saw there at the end. And then, and you can easily put Fields there too, but you could say, hey, I think Jordan Faison's going to take a jump, because there was a lot there that showed that he was on that path. So he could take that jump, next year. I think there's obviously Price. I mean, I expect Price to be a better player this year than he was last year. So that's, part of the reason for it, because obviously he was like an explosive guy, but I think he can be just like a better runner in general and add that part of it too. So he can be, a playmaker. I think Eli Raridan, obviously you wouldn't put him there right now out of the top three, but there's a chance that he could be that guy for them. And obviously, like, they were using him as targeted as hey, we're going to go attack here on a slot fade kind of thing. And I think he's going to get more reps. He's going to play more. He should be the starter for this season. He's going to be featured a lot more, and he could be I think just athletically too, he has a chance to be a better version of Mitchell Evans, right? So I think that's on the table. So I think and whatever. If you want to go deep down to it, it's not like crazy to suggest that like Aeneas Williams could make a jump or something like that too. But like, I think if, just kind of like being, or even like a Will Pauling or whatever, right? Like, it's not crazy to think that based on kind of like, what he's done at Wisconsin, whatever. But whatever it lies, they're going to have 3 or 4 or 5 playmakers there. So I think they're in a really good shape there on offense.
I think Notre Dame's like offensive playmaker situation is as good as it's been in a long time. Like, because the fact that you're getting Love and Price back it's kind of it's unprecedented in the program. I mean, not unprecedented in the program, certainly recent history. I mean, like, I think you could go back to like 95, 96 when you had like Autry Denson, Robert Farmer, and like Randy Kinder, right? Like those guys, those are like 3 quality backs that get started anywhere in the country, right? I mean, explosive plays kind of all over the place from those 3 guys. I think having Love and Price back, and I think that if we were like, I only put 3 because 3 is part of the formula, but like, I think realistically you could say like 5 very good to elite playmakers in the sport of college football, right? With Faison and Price added on to the 3, right? I think you have to put Malachi Fields in there. Like, if Malachi Fields had the last 2 years that he had at Notre Dame and he had him at Virginia, if he had those at Notre Dame, like, we'd very comfortably say like he was going to be one of the main playmakers for Notre Dame, right? And I think we'd be comfortable saying that. Like, his production is good enough to where you can kind of count on him, like much more so than someone like Eli Raridan. I like Eli Raridan.
Oh yeah, obviously,
yeah.
So, I'm just saying is like rare. Those are guys like I would say like are if we're looking at the end of the year and Eli Raridan's one of the 3, I would be shocked. That's what I'm saying.
Right. And like, if there is anyone on Notre Dame's offense that is like, man, he really took a huge jump from what he was, I think Eli Raridan's the guy. It's kind of weird to me that he wasn't more successful even with the struggles that Mitchell Evans had. I think a part of that was the way that Notre Dame was running their offense. By the way, you did mention something about Riley Leonard in the last 2 games and how he threw the ball. It kind of goes in line with the way Notre Dame ran offense last year, where it makes total sense to me that the offensive passing game kind of opened up when they were like chasing the game. Certainly against Ohio State, and then against Penn State too. They were losing, and they had to, they had to push the ball a little bit more. And I think that Notre Dame wasn't in that position almost all year, right?
Yeah.
And I just think there was so much more available to them. But I think Mike Denbrock was very much – I think if we ever got Mike Denbrock in a situation where – and maybe we can – maybe the media can ask him about this. When I say the media, we're in the media. Matt or you, when you go to spring, you could kind of ask like how much he kind of protected that offensive line a little bit and didn't put them at risk when they didn't need to, when they were up in games.
Oh, right? I think it's 100% he did that. Yeah.
I so much because it was just a complete swing.
Especially early on in the season.
Right. Because like you look at a game like Louisville, right? When they were pressing the game early, they got up 21-7, and then they didn't press the game again until it was like, hey, it's 30, it's 24-17, and we're kind of stalling out a little bit. We need a drive. So you hit a couple big pass plays and now you're in the end zone, right? That's just kind of how it was. He was very conscious of not trying to, put the team overall at risk, and the offensive line specifically. I thought that was interesting. And so, that's a deal for him. All right, moving on to the other parts of the list here. Let me just pull it up again. All right, so we have offensive playmakers. I thought defensive playmakers was a little bit more difficult. Again, it's kind of the same thing where like I don't have Drake Bowen on here. And I just thought of it more about like all-American level type of upside, right? I think Adon Schuler is there. I think Leonard Moore is there. And I think KVA is on there. I think KVA next year is going to have a monster season. I think he's going to be a full-time player. I think he's going to have I think he's Notre Dame hasn't had 100 tackle guy in a long time. I think he might be that. I think KVA could have 100 tackles next year. If Drake Bowen makes a lot of tackles too. I mean, it just I think those two are going to have the bulk of the tackles for the defense next season. But I went with those three. There are other options, right? I think Christian Gray is one. I mean, he's definitely a playmaker. He's just given up a lot more. But there's other players involved. But I think as the core of their talent, I think Schuler, Moore, and KVA are kind of where it's at. Curious to get your thoughts on that. If there was someone else, I know you had kind of tiers of guys. I'm curious if there's someone else you were thinking about.
Well, yeah, to me, Moore and Schuler make to me, they're 100% in there. Yeah. They would be the top two guys. I mean, 17 Havoc plays for Moore as a true freshman.
Unbelievable.
Didn't start till halfway through the season. That's incredible. And then even at some points too, he didn't get that many balls thrown his way comparatively to a lot of other guys, right? So it's he probably could even have more ball production if that was the case, right? Schuler, 12, have plays. Obviously, he was a guy that in the playoff too, he was a guy who didn't have the greatest game against Penn State, but certainly made a huge play against Georgia on that fourth down and short, and then made another pretty significant play against Ohio State as well. And he's just a guy that has made plays in every single way, right? Coming down, playing the run, running the alley, making plays deep on the ball. I think he's going to be a better player in coverage this season. It's just makes sense that he is going to take that kind of next step there. And I think he has all the tools to do that. So, 12 Havoc plays, obviously it's great. Like you mentioned with Gray, he had 15.5 Havoc plays. He had pick sixes. He had monster plays. So you could easily just put him there. But I mean, just to kind of break it up, I think, taking out the kind of struggles at the end of the year out of it, you could easily just kind of slot him in and just say, well, they have those guys in the secondary. And sure, they do. And I mean, this is why it becomes another thing where it's deeper. As you said, KVA is a guy that I think will probably make a big jump, right? He's probably going to make a big jump. If you look at KVA, Bowen, Sneed, Osbury, 9 Havoc plays for Bowen, KVA 5.5. Obviously, he missed some time too. Yeah. Sneed 8 Havoc plays, Osbury 7.5. If one of these guys takes a massive jump next year and all of a sudden becomes a 14, 15, it's not out of the question. But the other thing is you play all these linebackers and they get all these reps. It's it's kind of broken up in between them. I think the one argument I would say for Bowen is that I think that he became a better blitzer late as the season went on and became more effective at it. Just everything, just being more smart about it, timing, just wrapping when they're running stunts a little bit, tighter, and just doing all that kind of stuff. And obviously the huge play he made against Ohio State, that incredible. Talk about hit and hustle. Just absolutely.
That is the textbook definition of it.
Yeah, just blitzing on a play, picked up, hustles all the way downfield to punch it out. I mean, he had 3 forced fumbles on the year. That's something that I always look at when guys are putting up forced fumble numbers. That's just always thinking. You always think that's playmaking, right? So, I think KVA is who I would lean to as well. But if you told me that hey, it's Drake Bowen or it's Sneed or if it's Osbury, whatever, I wouldn't be shocked by any of that. And I really think you never know with some of the other guys that they're gonna young guys stepping up too, right? Because no one would have said Leonard Moore last year, right? So we'll see, but I think it's another kind of thing. If you're looking at playmakers, that's why you feel good about it, because it's well, they definitely have at least 3 and probably more, So they're in a good spot.
Yeah. And if you're an elite playmaker and you need a video to put out, you don't know what do I do? How do I do that? Then you need to call VSR Media, founded by Notre Dame Football, pregame host and Emmy Award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh. VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo, whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business. VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. All right, we're on to the quality O-line portion of the list. You need 3 quality O-linemen, and I think Notre Dame has probably like 5. Right? I don't know what to say. Like, I don't know how to factor in Ashton Craig just because of the injury thing. And he didn't play that many games. I think we believe he's a quality player.
Yeah, you wouldn't put him in the top 3.
Yeah,
because of all that. What you said,
yeah. But that's fine because I have Emil Wagner as one, Billy Strouth as another, and then Charles Jagusaw as the other. I've seen enough from Charles Jagusaw to where it's like he hasn't played that much. I'm putting him in. I think if you go in and you perform against Penn State and Ohio State in the semifinal in the national title game, I'm putting you in. I believe in your ability. And that's where it's going to be. I think this is where the strength of Notre Dame is this offensive line paired with their skill positions. It just could be a really special group. And based on where they're going as a unit and everything, it like this really sets up. Like I think Notre Dame's offensive playmaker. The only thing is like, man, I wish there were some interior guys on defense that were. You found a little bit more confidence in, but man, these offensive guys are just kind of, it's a big time group, especially this offensive line. It could be, I think it could be pretty special.
Yeah, I think it definitely has that potential. And we also don't know, like, because easily you could throw, Knapp in there too, obviously,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And I think we also don't know if like there's going to be somebody else who makes that jump, right?
I mean, Kirby Lambert, yeah.
Kirby Lambert. I mean, who's to say that Sullivan Absher might not be a guy who takes a jump or something like that, right? So it's on the table, but I think the whole point of it is you coming into the season. First of all, I don't know if people realize that, like, not that I'm like super into like PFF grades, especially with linemen. But I think in general, you can take like, hey, this guy's got a good grade. Hey, he's a pretty good player. And Emil Wagner has the 6th best grade of any returning offensive tackle out of Power 4 players.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. So I think, and he's going to be a better player than he was this year. I think I saw a lot of really good things about him. Also, too, like talk about battle tested. Geez, could this guy go against better edge rushers?
Yeah,
in over the space of the end of the season there, right? So, and Strouth, I think too, was like playing a bum ankle for pretty much the second half of the season. Still was playing at a pretty high level. And
was it since Purdue?
Well, pretty much because when he came back,
I don't think he was ever healthy.
When he came back from the 4 games, he was never right.
No,
like he was never completely right. So, it was amazing too if you think about like some of the times when he's like getting out to the second level and making blocks, and you're like, and then you see him after the game. This guy can barely move.
Yeah,
So I mean, a tough kid. So, I think they're just in a great spot there. And Jagusaw, obviously, I think he has a chance to be a star. So they have it all in terms of they are so much, they're in like a completely different place than when they were a year ago on the offensive line. When you said, okay, well, the guys returning are Coogan and Spindler, but I don't know, like, are these guys going to even start? And then they didn't start. And they played well when they came in and replaced, but I think there's obviously a different ceiling for these guys this year too. So the offensive line has a chance to be pretty awesome.
I think And the reason, and I'll tell you why I went with these three is like I feel like they are all American caliber. Which isn't like a prediction. I'm not saying that, and that was kind of how I defaulted to, like the like skill positions as well, and then like the defensive playmakers. I just feel like Jeremiah Love's all American caliber. Like there's a very good chance he's a first team All American running back, and actually and if you look at it like that, that is one thing that the skill positions. I mean, maybe it's just the nature of the way Notre Dame plays offense. Like I don't think Jaden Greathouse or Malachi Fields is going to be an All American, right? Or even has the chance. They kind of don't need to be, again, with the nature of the way Notre Dame plays.
It's harder at skill positions too, because there's so many people who put up numbers and all that. And
yeah, like you get some guy from.
Also, I mean, Zach Martin wasn't an All-American.
Well, he's not good. I don't, was he good?
He's not one of the best offensive linemen of all time. But yeah,
it's a true point. Yeah. But touche.
But of that caliber is that's the point, right? It's not the point of whether or not they get voted or whatever. Because look, there's been plenty of guys. I mean, Notre Dame has had plenty of guys that I'm like, why is this guy not an All-American? The people who vote for All-American.
Well, was Will okay?
I don't think Will Fuller was an All-American. Yeah, so I don't think so. But
right.
You know what? Because it's like one of those things too, where like there's also like this somewhat of like people waiting their turn to do it. It's like if he came back, well, he would have been a preseason All-American, and then he would have been like, it's stupid, right? Like, just he should have been an All-American, but whatever. It doesn't matter. It ultimately doesn't matter. Like one of the reasons why Julian Love was an All-American as a junior is because he had the monster sophomore season, but before us, right? So it's just one of these things where that's how they kind of do it. None of it matters. It just matters if you are at this certain level of play, and I think that's the point that you were making. I think it was a good one.
I'm gonna try to effort. Someone look up to me on this. So on this new computer, Jamie, it's not new per se, but it's like new to me. It's actually old, but I can't. It like blocks Wikipedia, and I can't look it up. Someone look up if Will Fuller was like a third-team All-American or something. This is actually going to bother me if he wasn't.
I don't think he was.
He's just look it up. He's too good for that. It makes me upset. Will Fuller.
Oh, second-team All-American.
There we go. All right. Yeah. Well, I don't think they're going to be as good as Will Fuller. All right. The last two pass rushers. You need two quality pass rushers. I put Boubacar Traore on here. I think we're the most excited about him. But they do have other ones, like Jordan Botelho is one. And I put Bryce Young on here. I just think Bryce Young's gonna be good. I think he's gonna take a big jump. I think he's gonna be like kind of a mainstay at the position. And I wonder if what they do with. I mean, he'll just platoon with Burnham probably at the strong end. I just don't know what.
Well, I think he'll play Viper with.
Will he play Viper? Because they have Botelho too.
Yeah, but I think they'll. I mean, I think the point is what they will do is I think they'll be able to move guys around and play. All those guys are going to know like the multiple. I think that's how this is going to kind of go because, just right now they just have enough guys that they can kind of do that. And then also too, the other thing is the main thing with pass rushers is that it doesn't matter if you have like this many Vipers or whatever, you could play 3 Vipers on third down, right? Like that's if you wanted to, right? So you can,
that's true.
Yeah.
And Bryce Young,
either way, he's going to be
Bryce Young's definitely someone they could move inside, by the way. I think eventually.
Oh yeah. Pass rush stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, how do you assess that in terms of like, the problem is Traore was hurt, in my opinion. And same thing with Botelho. Like guys come back from things, and I think Traore's was not as Botelho had the patella, right? So that one can be a little bit just iffy. Traore had the ACL, which people come back from that. But I think that the how quality this is in question only because of injury for Traore, and just like Bryce Young, you're projecting what he'll be after a year of being a big time player. he hasn't done it yet, right? So it's not proven, but it just you kind of expect it. But where do you come out on this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you always do it with the caveat of like, yeah, we'll see what these guys are like in terms of health and where they're at in the season. But I'm just telling everyone right now that Botello, I mean, I think people knew he was playing at a high level. I don't think people realized just how high a level he was playing at. He was like, if he would have kept that up over the course of the season, like, I mean, he probably wouldn't have got voted All-American, but he should have been an All-American. Like, if he was playing at an All-American caliber level, he had 25.6% pass rush win rate, which would have been, if he had 46 pass rush opportunities, obviously in the 3 games. If you just put that into PFF in terms of like, well, all the guys with 46%, because out of anything, that was 4th best of it all. Power 4 pass rushers, obviously it's a smaller sample size, but still it's, there's another guy with a small sample size who's in there too. And 50%, half of his pass rushes against true pass sets, the guy was winning, which would have been number 1 out of everyone in the thing. Like, that's insane. Like, he was actually just like, that's when people say like borderline unblockable, that's what it was. Like, he was like, yeah, he was doing that kind of stuff as a pass rusher consistently. And that's why when you're playing like him and Boubacar together, it was like, holy geez, like, running stunts with these two, and Boubacar, right? 3 sacks, 2 quarterbacks hits in 5 games. We had the pick 6 too, which was, obviously a pretty darn good play.
Yeah.
Like, I just think when you look at those 3 guys, those are the guys that I would put kind of like in that category above everybody else, health permitting, right? Is the guys that I would put above everyone else. But I will say, if you're kind of like looking at some other guys that could possibly do it too, I think you have to kind of, at least you definitely have to admit that like Junior Tuihalamaka, not like a dynamic pass rusher at all, but like he had 26 pressures on the year. He was just a way better pass rusher this year than he had year before. I don't know that he won't take like another jump and be someone who's actually, be much more of a factor than he was. I think that's like at least on the table. Donovan Heinisch was really good as a pass rusher as the season went along. Mm-hmm. And you just saw him. He was one of these guys who's like the best guy in stunts. When Cross was obviously hobbling on one leg, Heinisch took a lot of those like 3rd down reps inside and was really good. He had 3 pressures in the national championship game, 7 pressures to overall versus UGA, Penn State, and Ohio State. Pretty good. And he was a guy who was like a factor. He was very much in a Howard Cross-ish type of guy with his just lateral movement and how he was doing and winning 1-on-1 and being able to bend back to the quarterback. Also was held like 3 times blatant in the Ohio State game they didn't call. Just another chance to just rip on the refs here, but sorry, it was a joke. They're really bad. Like when you really see like the end zone copy, it's so bad. I have no idea how these weren't called. It was really, really bad. And this is obviously the biggest asterisk of them all because we don't know what the status of Jason Onye is going to be. We don't know even if he's back and he's like back and practicing and doing we don't know where he's at because he missed obviously a lot of time. It's one of these things where people just expect people to just jump back in and be exactly where they were. It doesn't always work like that. Like it in fact, rarely works like that.
Yeah.
In saying that, he was showing what before he left the team, he was showing things as a pass rusher that you'd only seen just brief glimpses of. Like he showed a little bit in like the spring game where it was like, oh, like he's doing a little bit more here than I thought. And so he had 8 pressures, on 14 versus 14 true passes. So not a big sample size, but still 8 out of 14. He had a 47.2% win rate. That is like, Was he going to be over 40%? No. Like anything, if you are an interior guy and you are over 20% on like a win rate, it's like elite. Like those are like, hey, you're going to be a first round pick type of things, right? So to say that he was going to keep that up, probably not. But also to say that he wouldn't have been somebody who maybe like could have just stepped in at some point and like made just some play where he was like extremely disruptive and like blew up a play as a pass rusher. I think he easily could have done that. And he has traits there that I don't think any of the other guys have. Like, more so just not just like length and size, whatever, but just pure twitch that he's got. That's just at another level. So would be not one of these guys you would ever consider in that top two, obviously for many reasons.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at a dark horse that you're someone like all of a sudden you're like, whoa, he's like incredible. Like Mills was a very, very good pass rusher for Notre Dame this year. Like obviously Cross was awesome the year before. Like he could be one of these guys who's like, well, now it's his turn. We'll see.
Yeah. So, look, Notre Dame very well set up in 2025 to have a very good football team one more time. The caveat is the quarterback is the one with the question mark. We don't know who it's going to be, and we don't know how good that quality of play is going to be. But look, we're going to have plenty of time.
You got those playmakers. You got the offensive line. It helps.
Yep, and we've got a lot of Notre Dame's got a lot of time to kind of figure it out. So it's going to be fun to follow. But then we're going to end it there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. If you like what you heard, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. So whenever it is, we are going to go live. We'll be back on Thursday. Might be time for a mailbag, Jamie. If we don't get more, if we don't get more news or something like that, we just throw open the mailbag. We'll answer some questions from ISD customers. All right. We'll be done. Thank you, everyone. We'll talk to you on Thursday. Keep hitting and hustling.